Welcome to Where Are They Now?, where we reach into the archives of Lenape, Shawnee, Cherokee, and Seneca high schools and invite selected alumni to share their memories and fill us in on their career paths after commencement. Since Lenape's first graduating class in 1961, Shawnee's in 1972, Cherokee's in 1978, and Seneca's in 2005, over 77,000 individuals have received diplomas from these four schools. Join us now for another Lenape District alumni interview on Where Are They Now?
Hello and welcome to Season 20 of Where Are They Now? I'm Mark Sonsini, a 1996 graduate of Cherokee High School, and today we'll be talking with a Shawnee alumnus from the class of 1975. He is president of Kona Group Chemical Manufacturing, residing in Hebron, Kentucky. I'd like to welcome William Buckley to the show. William, thanks for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, great to talk to you. I'm excited to hear about your career since high school. But first, let's go back and talk a little bit about your time at Shawnee. You grew up in Medford?
I did, in Mimosa Lakes, yep.
All right. And you have a few family connections to the Lenape District. Your parents worked in the district. Tell me about them.
So my father joined the teaching staff at Lenape, I believe in 1963, maybe a year or two after it started.
Okay.
And he was in the business area all that time, doing typing teaching, accounting teaching, and eventually became department head of the business area for Lenape until he retired, probably about 30 years ago now.
Okay.
And my mother was a chemistry teacher. She started actually in Willingboro, but transferred over to Lenape, I think in 1965 or so, and was a chemistry teacher at Lenape for a number of years. And then when Cherokee opened, she took a position as vice principal of Cherokee High School. Okay. And stayed there until she retired.
All right. And any siblings at Shawnee with you?
I do. My older brother graduated in 1974. That class was the first class to actually physically go through Shawnee for all 4 years. Okay. So prior to that, they started at Lenape, in split sessions and then ended up at Shawnee. But he actually started at the Shawnee School, went for all 4 years. So I was the second class that did that. So when I went there, all the walls were actually painted, and there wasn't just blank cinder block walls, which were there for a little while.
Right.
So, so very early on in the Shawnee lineage.
Yes.
My sister, who was 4 years younger than me, went to Shawnee as well, and she actually still teaches there. She's a chemistry teacher there, and her name is Sharon Politis, her married name.
All right. There's a lot of family ties to the district. Let's talk about some of the teachers that had an impact on you at Shawnee. Your chemistry teacher, Ted Steinmetz, was one. Tell me about him.
Yeah, since I've gone into chemistry, he obviously had a very strong impact on me. He was a fantastic teacher. He had so many talents that he got to show the Shawnee family. He used to do the morning announcements, just a fantastic knowledge base in the chemistry field, and really got me interested in chemistry. And I've kept in touch with him all these years. I still see him occasionally and let him know what I'm doing. So he's been a great influence and just a fantastic personality. A
few math teachers that had an impact on you as well: Terry Oberg, Kathy High, and John Johnson. Tell us about them.
Right. So my 4 years at Shawnee, I would alternate each year. Kathy High, my freshman year in algebra, and then in pre-calculus, my junior year, and then Miss Oberg, who also was the coach of the cheerleading squad for Shawnee. Okay. She was my calculus teacher and statistics and probability teacher. So they were both just fantastic influences. And with my going into chemistry and chemical engineering, that's very strong in the math and sciences.
Sure.
They were just a great influence on me as teachers. John Johnson was a very good family friend. I actually had him for a period of time for geometry, and just a fantastic teacher. But he was also a family friend, and we used to go camping with his family. And he eventually became, of course, the vice principal at Shawnee. And then for a while, I guess after I left, he became principal after Gordon Gautier retired.
Yep. And speaking of the sciences, physics teacher Joe Geisher was an important one for you as well.
Absolutely. He was there the entire time, and I know just until a couple of years ago when he retired, physics is a very big part of engineering as well. And so he was a great influence on me, just a very knowledgeable guy, and great learning resource.
And some activities you were involved in at Shawnee. You were involved in cross country and wrestling. I know they were both special to you, and the coach for both of those was Bill Neal.
So Bill Neal was the coach of cross country for my first 2 years, and of course he was the coach for wrestling all 4 years I was there. And then he stopped coaching cross country, and Vito Germanario took over the cross country coaching my last 2 years there. So both fantastic sports. I ran a little bit of track too, but I really didn't focus on that too much. It was mostly those two sports. And during my time at Shawnee, my brother was actually on the varsity team, and I was on the junior varsity team for wrestling when, in 1973, the team went undefeated. I think it's still the only undefeated team. Matter of fact, just 2 nights ago, the Shawnee wrestling team now, which is ranked, I believe, #1 in South Jersey this year, had a big match with Camden Catholic, and they won. It came down to the last match, the 115-pounder. The Shawnee gentleman pinned his opponent, and that cemented Shawnee's position as the #1 ranking. So it's one of the best teams since when I went to school there in '73. And of course, that was also the year we had our only state champ, which was Dave Miller, who's still local in the area and teaches wrestling to this day. It was kind of interesting because at the match the other night, a group of us got together from the early '70s time frame and got to see each other. We all look a little different now. maybe don't stand up as straight as we used to, but they were all there.
That's good. And you mentioned, I think, we were talking before the show, wrestling and cross country. Those were special to you because of the relationships and the friendships you made there.
Absolutely. Bill Neal was such a great influence on not only myself, but everyone on the wrestling team and the cross country team. He spent so much time crafting and teaching young men on how to become men, outside of school, inside of school, and instilling the values that we continue to have to this day. And we still keep in touch on Facebook and still speak very strongly about the influence that Bill Neal played in all of our lives.
That's great. You were also involved in band at Shawnee, Dr. William Murphy and Jeff Loudon.
Yeah, Doc Murphy, just a fantastic guy, and we had such a great time in band all 4 years. And Jeff Loudon, who was just starting at that time, was just a fantastic musician, and his influence just kind of as one of the members, and eventually he took over that department. Just really a great influence, bringing out our musical talents. So that was a big part of it. And we used to have school all week long, and then at that time we played our football games on Saturdays. I think they do it Friday nights now, but we would come in on Saturday morning and run cross country for practice, and then we'd have to run to the band room and get changed into our band uniforms, and then go out and march during halftime at the football games, and then go back in and get changed and be able to watch the rest of the football game. So you were totally consumed with school and the activities at school. It took up all your time, and I imagine it kept a lot of us out of trouble as well.
Absolutely. Yep, that's a good thing. You were also part of National Honor Society at Shawnee and a chemistry lab assistant.
Yes, Mr. Steinmetz actually put me in the position of lab assistant, and that really helped me to develop a good appreciation of the chemistry field. And was a big benefit to me as I moved forward into chemistry and college and beyond into graduate school. So that was something that took up a lot of time and took up, at least a period a day, and it got me used to working with chemicals, outside of just the academic part of it that we did in high school. National Honor Society was a great group. I graduated in the top 10% of the class. The friendships that we made with all the other people in school, both in that group and outside that group, just continue to this day.
That's terrific. And you talked about being a chemistry lab assistant. That kind of prepared you for your chemistry education and career coming up. But right out of school, you go to the University of Delaware for pre-veterinary medicine. So
yeah, I always wanted to be a vet. I mean, I loved working with animals. Where I lived in Mimosa Lakes was very close to the Woodford Reserve in Centennial, where they worked with animals throughout the Wharton Tract and South Jersey, and so I used to spend a lot of time there working with them and developed a good appreciation for animals. So I always wanted to be a veterinarian. And so when I decided to go to the University of Delaware, I took up pre-vet as my major, which included a lot of chemistry and math and other courses, as well as agriculture courses. So that was a good learning experience there.
So you finished at University of Delaware, and a few years later, you were at University of Pennsylvania to get your degree in chemistry. Talk about the switch and what caused you to make the change.
So I guess I didn't understand how, the transition from high school to college quite worked. And so when I went into pre-veterinary medicine, I didn't know at the time that there were only 7 vet schools in the country at that time. And the process to get accepted to vet school was a very strenuous process. It was tougher than med school, actually, at that time. There were only 2 schools in the East, Penn and Cornell, that offered a veterinary program for graduate school. Okay. So the college that you went to made a big impact on whether you made it into vet school or not. Right. A lot of colleges would contract their students out, and the vet school would be obligated to take so many people from that school each year. University of Delaware, even though it had a fantastic agriculture school, did not contract any of their students out to vet schools. Okay. So I had to compete for 2 open positions that year at University of Pennsylvania, and there were 44 applicants with a 4.0 average for those 2 positions. So when I interviewed at Penn, I didn't get in. I was put on the waiting list for those open positions, but they did notify me that they really wanted me to go to school there. And if I went to school there and got a degree in chemistry while I was waiting, then I would automatically get into their vet school. Okay. So I chose to do that, and I went to Penn, and I got my chemistry degree in a fairly short period of time with everything I had gotten from Delaware. Sure. And then I decided at that time that I liked the chemistry more than I did the veterinary thing, so I decided to stay in the chemistry side of things and move forward with that. Okay.
So you graduate with your chemistry degree. What are you doing first in the industry?
So the first thing I did is, I was going to school at night in graduate school at Lehigh for physical chemistry, but my career has always been, working 40 hours a week and going to school as well. So very busy time schedule. And I think that kind of came out of going to Shawnee and being in so many different activities and sports and everything else. So I felt comfortable with doing that. So I was going to school at Lehigh for physical chemistry, and I started working at National Starch and Chemical in North Jersey, which was a big chemical company. People would know it today by the Unilever name, who owned it at that time. All right. And so I was getting indoctrinated into the polymer industry within chemistry, working there and then going to school at night at the same time for my graduate degree.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about the polymer industry. A lot of us may not really understand what that means. Can you tell us what that is and maybe some examples of what everyday things that maybe we might know that are connected to that?
Sure, it's a big industry, and you can think of it as, partially the plastics industry and things like paints and coatings, adhesives, and then you really get into all different kinds of materials as well. And it's changed over the years, and now it includes inorganic materials as well as organic materials. So anything that you see in front of you, and every room has all this stuff in it, plastics, coatings, finishes on surfaces, all of that has to do with the polymer industry. Okay. And over my years in that field, I've really come across all parts of it. So some things that people would recognize just, out of the blue would be the paint on automobiles. So when you go buy a car, you look at what kind of car it is, you look at the engine and thing, but the thing that really stands out is the paint. Sure. And the visual aspect of that. And so the paint on automobiles is, a several coat system. It's very sophisticated. Yep. And so I work in all the raw materials that go into that, as well as the finished paint itself, working with such big companies as GM and Ford, and then the suppliers to that industry like Sherwin-Williams or PPG or BASF. So I've worked with all of those companies over my career, either supplying them with raw materials or helping them evaluate things.
Okay, very interesting. So we're surrounded by polymers, basically.
Right. Even the chair you're sitting in right now is a vinyl product, but there's a coating on top of that vinyl, which is a polyurethane coating to make it feel like leather. Okay. And all automobiles have that on our seats, as well as the seat you're sitting in. And the reason that seat's comfortable is because it's got a polyurethane foam that gives it some cushioning. So all of those things are polymers, and I've worked in all those areas.
Well, now our audience knows that we didn't spend the big bucks for an actual leather chair. So maybe that's probably a good thing. Okay, so you talked about you've worked in many different facets of the industry in your career. You started out as a research assistant, then you've taken lab director positions, and over the years you've sort of worked your way into the sales and marketing and management and ownership as you've gotten, you have 2 PhDs, physical chemistry, material science, and also your MBA from University of Penn Wharton School. So kind of talk about your progression through the years from, kind of like, the nuts and bolts of it to now more of the management side of it.
Yeah, so the first really 20 years of the career was in the lab as a research scientist for a couple different companies. One of the companies used to be called Ciba-Geigy, which was a big name, several years ago, and now people would look at it as Novartis, which is a big drug company. And so Ciba-Geigy was broken up a couple years ago, and Novartis came out of that, which was the life sciences part of it, and pharmaceutical products and things like that. And they also had a chemical division, and I actually worked in both of those. So I was with them after I left National Starch and Chemical, really doing adhesives and coatings and things. So I got some life science experience, and then went back into the industrial area. So a lot of research on materials. One of the notable things that I worked in that area with is people know today, they hear about military aerospace, such as the F-35 or the F-22 jets, the fighters that the military has. Yeah. Well, people don't realize those planes are actually made of plastic. They're all plastic, the whole body of the plane. And when the original competition between Lockheed Martin and GE and some of the other companies to come up with the joint fighter, the material used to make those planes was the same so whoever won that contest would win the contract. And the material that I worked on, the epoxy, that's used in the epoxy composite to make those planes was the same in both of them. So early on, I knew that our material was going to be the material that the plane was manufactured from. So that was very interesting work. Things like low radar signatures. So those things are stealth aircraft. The radar passes right through the material, and yet the material is very strong, stronger than metal, and yields an airplane that'll last for years and years.
Never would have thought that polymers had all these different applications. Very cool. So now you're the president of Kona Group. That's a company you started. What year did you start that? And tell us, are you basically just a polymer supplier and that type of thing?
So yeah, when I left the lab and I decided to go out into business management and following the materials that I developed and others developed out into industry and really got into the business side, it was very interesting to see the whole, from start to finish, from a lab project all the way out to selling it. And so I followed that progression from working in a lab up to management, and then to company structure, and then to ownership of companies. So Kona was actually started about 4 years ago, and 1 year ago I decided to leave what I was doing at that time and become president of Kona. Okay. So Kona manufactures raw materials that go into all of these industries and supplies, a lot of the big companies in the U.S. and the world, such as a PPG or a Sherwin-Williams or other well-known names out there, BASF, and Air Products and Chemicals, where I worked as well for a number of years. So we supply specialty products to them, and then they use those to manufacture their products. Okay. So that's the Kona side of things, and I'm happy to say that Kona has been a big success. When I took it over about a year ago and changed this direction a little bit, we increased our sales this last year from about 100 million in sales to almost 200 million in sales. So we've almost doubled in size, even in spite of the pandemic and things.
Yeah. What is the competition like in the industry as far as raw material suppliers like you're dealing with? Is there a lot of competition? Is there only a few companies that do it?
As you get to who actually makes the basic raw materials, the field gets smaller and smaller. Okay. So in the end, where people are selling finished goods, there's literally hundreds and thousands of companies doing that. But when you're making something, for instance, an epoxy resin, there's only about 10 companies worldwide that actually make epoxy resins. Wow. And then everyone else that sells it buys it from one of those. Or urethanes, there's only 5 companies that make urethanes worldwide, because the chemicals used to make urethanes are very hazardous. So you have to be a world-class supplier that has all the bells and whistles and world-class plants to make it for the right pricing, to make it competitive. So as you get back further and further into the raw material stream, the number of companies really is reduced. Okay.
So along with being president of Kona, you're also a board member for PPI. Tell us about that.
So PPI is a startup company. It just started this last November 1st. I think the concept came up in October, but we really started the company November 1st. And that company makes finished products for the flooring and the artistic industry. I don't know if you've seen lately the epoxy river tables that have become a little bit of a rage out there. Yeah. So we make the epoxy that's used to make those tables. Okay. And so they're beautiful artistic work. We do a lot of flooring work with our artistic work on the floors to give your floors really something to look at.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. Yeah. Maybe we should look in to get one of those tables for the show here. I think that would be a nice add-in. Let's talk about some of the things that you're working on currently. You're working on the isolation of gold 2 compound from Merck, and that is looking to be used in the treatment for arthritis. Tell me about how that works.
So gold has, for a long time, been a treatment for arthritis, and the work there actually went on at the University of Pennsylvania. And Merck has one of their big sites worldwide in North Wales, Pennsylvania, right outside of Philadelphia. So gold 1, the isolation of gold 1 is used in current drugs to work to alleviate arthritic pain.
Okay.
And gold 3 is also used in that application. So there was a theoretical possibility that you could isolate gold 2, and no one knew how it would work in that application. It might work better than gold 1 and gold 3. It might not work at all. And so the project that I took on, and the original work was done in the 60s, I believe, to isolate gold 2 and to make it something that you could actually work with. But the next step that I had been working on was to isolate the gold 2 and then try it out in clinical trials and see how it worked with arthritis and see if it did any better than the gold 1 or gold 2 or gold 3 isotopes.
Not surprising with somebody of your experience that you've been published in multiple journals and you've been a speaker at many conferences. And you've also worked at a world-renowned ski and snowboard research institute in Austria. Tell us about that.
The invention of epoxy resins took place in 1938, and one of the places that it took place in is in Switzerland with Ciba-Geigy Corporation. They made adhesives, glues out of epoxy resin. They also made some of the first castings for teeth, artificial teeth, out of epoxy material. And it was invented then, and the progression of that was to use epoxy as the adhesive to glue together skis.
Okay.
So Ciba-Geigy actually set up a research center in Austria to only look at ski construction using different materials and epoxy adhesive to hold all those things together. So it was a fantastic opportunity. And I'm a skier, so I love to ski. And so to go over there and actually make skis out of this material and try all different designs and working with other engineers to design different skis. You know, you talk today about parabolic skis versus what they used to be, which were just straight boards. And now it's so far advanced, but epoxies are still used to glue together the multiple layers in skis and put together skis that are so much easier to ski on today. And so there were several years that I worked in that area that were just a fantastic experience. And I got to ski a lot too. So.
Yeah, that must have been awesome. A good perk of the job.
Yeah.
So speaking of travel, that's one of your favorite things to do, right? And you've gotten to do a lot of it over the years. Tell me about some of the places you've been, or your favorite places, or where you want to go that you haven't been to.
So of course the chemistry industry, one of the big countries worldwide is Germany. That's very involved in chemicals, and the largest chemical companies in the world, like BASF or what used to be called Bayer, now it's Covestro, are located in Germany, and there are several others as well. And so I spent a lot of time in Germany working with German scientists in collaborative efforts to work on projects. So from Germany, of course, you can go all around Europe. We at Air Products, we had manufacturing sites in the Netherlands and the UK, and sourced a lot of material from Europe. And then beyond that, most recently I worked for a company called Aditya Birla, which is a large multinational company based in Mumbai, India.
Okay.
And our manufacturing plants were located in Thailand, India, Germany, and South America. And so with them, I ran their Americas division, but I also sat on the board for the worldwide production of materials. And so I got to spend countless trips in Thailand and India, various places in India. South America, I covered the territory of South America, and I had an office in Sao Paulo, Brazil for a number of years. So the travel with the company just fantastic. And
Yeah.
luckily, rather than most travel where you just fly in the night before, you go to a meeting in the morning, and then you're back flying out of an airport that afternoon and not able to see anything.
Yeah.
Because I had a lot of experience in a lab, I could actually go somewhere and spend a couple weeks there and get to see, the countryside while I was doing my work. So just a fantastic benefit.
Very cool. What do you think is your favorite place that you've been?
Thailand is right up there. It's
Okay.
just an amazing country, beautiful beaches. If anyone watches the James Bond movies, there's been a number of James Bond movies filmed in the Phuket area of Thailand, but even in the jungles in the northern part in Chiang Mai are just beautiful. And Pattaya is a kind of a crazy area on the eastern side of Thailand that you kind of see things on TV about that, but the beaches are beautiful. Germany, everywhere you go in Germany, there's always a castle on top of a hill. So you always visit the castles, and you're always walking uphill to the top of the hill to see these castles. And luckily, the last 5-6 years, I spent a lot of time in South America, which was also just eye-opening how different South America is, and there's so much to explore there.
So you're also doing some volunteer work and developing mentor programs for some young scientists. Tell us about that.
Right. So, when you look at the background that I've had in this industry and all it's given back to me and the fantastic time I've had working in it, you look at how you can give back to the industry. And I think it's a lot of fun for me and incumbent upon me to try to bring people into the industry and train them and have them see the same benefits and fun that I've enjoyed over the years. So I work very closely with the National Coatings Society, some technical societies having to do with paints and coatings and adhesives and composites, and try to mentor young chemists into this field, try to increase the number of women that enter into the math and sciences field as well, because that diversity just helps the industry out immensely and brings a totally new perspective into it. So I've really enjoyed mentoring young people. Right now I'm at a factory actually in Lebanon, Pennsylvania that we're building, and I'm training a new plant manager here to learn the industry and to make this a success.
Terrific. Well, you're doing a lot of great things and definitely very successful since your time at Shawnee. So it's been great catching up with you today. We wish you a lot of continued success in the future, and thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
And that's all for this episode of Where Are They Now? For other Lenape District alumnus interviews, check us out online at youtube.com/Lenape District TV. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.